Everybody, and welcome back to Am's Entitled Podcast. I'm Am. Hi, if you've never met me before, it's really nice to meet you. Welcome to my Percy Jackson dedicated podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be doing part 5 of the Son of Neptune book. So, yes, we are going to be going through chapters 29 to 35. We are coming a little bit closer to the end now, so there's going to be a lot of drama, a lot of um, what's the word? Chaos, and just whatever these books have become now. So try to stay with me. I will try and explain it as clearly as possible. Just a quick note, I forgot to mention this in the last episode, which is that this review does contain spoilers. So if you haven't read the books, please don't listen to me because I just spoil everything. If you don't really know how this works, I basically just give you a rundown of what happens in each chapter, and I just talk about my thoughts, feelings, any Easter eggs that I discover, any hints to the previous Percy Jackson books, that sort of thing. So, let's get into it because I've already been talking for a minute and I haven't even started talking about what I'm supposed to. So, let's go for it. So, chapter 29 is Hazel's point of view, and it opens up with Hazel feeling like she's worse than Phineas. Now, this feeling is because Hazel is convinced that she's supposed to be dead, and obviously that didn't happen. So, in this part of the book, we talk a little bit more about her past. So, you guys will see kind of what she's been through and her journey to the underworld as well. But we'll talk about more in a second. Um, so, they get on the boat to the Columbia River, and the Feast of Fortuna is taking place 72 hours from now. So, they're really running out of time on this quest. Hazel tells Frank about how she escaped the underworld. And there's a little bit more details about that coming up towards the end of this chapter. Frank and Percy obviously are trying their best to comfort her, to make her feel better, but in her head, it's just, I think it's one of those things where self blame is actually a lot worse. Like, she just cannot forgive herself for what's happened. Like, how is it possible that she's made it through the underworld and, like, her mum didn't get the same fate, sort of thing? So I think it's a lot of um, remorse for her mother and just not feeling like life is fair, which is obviously the worst thing ever because we all know that life isn't fair at all. And I think that Hazel's taken it really personally. She tells them that she didn't go to Elysium, and suddenly she flashes back and she's in the underworld with Frank on Cheiron's boat, floating on the river Styx. So basically, the fact that she is able to bring Frank into this vision as well, I thought was quite a cool concept, and it's very clever of Rick. Like, I love his writing style. He just puts things in books that I just don't expect, and this was one of the scenes that I just loved from this book because it's so well written and it's such a simple scene, but it has such a powerful impact. Basically, she tells Frank that they are in the echo of her past. I love that term, echo of her past. I think that's just a beautiful term. And to not worry, like I said, I just thought that was pretty cool that Frank can see her past too. A little bit of a soulmate connection going on there. I see what you're doing, Rick. She also tells Frank to watch the judges decide her fate. So they were basically in the moment where the judges of the underworld decided what would happen to Hazel. The judges told her that she would go to Elysium, but her mother would have eternal punishment, of course. And that must not be nice for any child to hear that their parent will be damned for eternity. I mean, that's awful, and I can't imagine how terrible it would have made Hazel feel. And obviously, when Hazel went to plead her case, the judges decided to send her and her mother to the fields of Asphodel. Now, I don't know if that's worse or if that's like a better punishment. I don't really know. Suppose the fields of Asphodel, like the souls just walk around and they're tied down by the regrets that they have in the world, which sounds worse, to be quite honest, but okay. Frank tells her that she didn't deserve to go to Asphodel. And I honestly agree, like, with the sacrifice that she made to save her mum, like, I just don't understand how they thought that Asphodel was the most appropriate place for her just because she defended her mother. I think that's wrong in my opinion. But anyway, Frank shows her his stick and tells her everything about it. So I don't know if you remember in the last, I don't know if it was the last episode that we talked about it. Sorry, what was I saying? Yeah, we were talking about Frank, and obviously, if you remember the conversation that he had with Iris, Iris told him that, he should tell somebody this secret, someone who he can trust, somebody who he can depend his life on, and I'm glad that that person is Hazel. Rick is so good at creating these very intense relationships, and they're just nothing can convince me that they're not soulmates because I'm just like, that is just adorable. Like, they talk about their past with no shame, no judgment, and I think that that is one of the most beautiful aspects of their relationship. He asks her to hold on to the stick for him and he says that he gives it to her because he trusts her, which is just so cute. I was dying. I was fangirling, as you could probably tell. They see Nico, who says that he's come for his sister, but she chose to be reborn as something else. So he takes Hazel because he feels like she deserves a second chance. So obviously, if you don't know the sister that he's referring to, it's Bianca, and obviously Bianca died in uh my brain's hurting now, in the Titan's Curse book. And instead of going to Elysium because she died as a hero, she chose to be reborn, which meant that Nico was never going to see her again. And he didn't take it well, basically. And obviously, he's seen Hazel, who is another child who of Hades that he feels deserves a second chance. So he saved her from Asphodel, basically. So we're back on to chapter 30, still in Hazel's point of view, and it opens up with Percy waking up Hazel up because they've reached Seattle. Percy tells her that they have passed the port, but Ella said not to worry because they were sharing. Um, she could feel the stick in her pocket. So now, like, this weight that Frank has been carrying around, he's sort of been relieved of it. And obviously, Hazel realizes the responsibility that she's got with looking after the stick, and she can literally feel it, like the weight, almost like the weight of his life in her hands, which is quite intense, but also very like such a cool concept, I think. Um, as they go downtown, they all start to feel a little bit on edge. So again, you're getting this sort of little hint that something is coming, sort of thing. Percy tells them that they are stopping here to find Raina's sister, so maybe she could help them because she's part of the Amazons. So the Amazons are a group of warrior women. Now, I don't know if you guys remember this, and I think it is in the uh last Olympian book where Thalia, who is the daughter of Zeus, chose to be part of this group. And oh no, that wasn't Thalia actually. Never mind, I take that back. That's completely wrong. But yeah, they're a group of warrior women basically, and they have like their own queen and their own tribe, that sort of thing. Yeah, so they're called the Amazon Warriors, I think. I think that's what they're called. Yeah, I don't know where the whole thing about Thalia came. Honestly, guys, I'm having like the biggest brain frog ever, so you're just gonna have to excuse me for that. I do know that Thalia works for Artemis. So yeah, brain got a bit confused there, but it's fine. Ella tells them that she will find them later and flies away. Oh, okay. I was a bit shocked because I was just like, it's almost like Ella knows where she's going. So I'm like, all right, yeah, sure, see you soon, sort of thing. They dock the boat and they get off, and the Pax, which is the boat, sinks, which is brilliant. So now they have no way off the island, which is absolutely fantastic for them. So they start searching for the Amazons because obviously there's no point in um dwelling over the boat. Like they're just gonna have to find another way off the island. Hazel sees a building with Amazon written on it and they go inside. They tell the girl Kinsey that they are looking for Hyla, and Frank gets kicked backwards, and Percy ends up with a sword pointed at his chin. Wow. This was one of those moments where, everything happened so fast, and it was just like, it was a bit fast paced, and I was like, whoa, like, what just happened there? I felt like I just lived that moment myself, and I was like, oh, like what's going on. I was probably just as confused as everybody else was in that scene. And Kinsey tells them that Queen Hyla will decide their fate. Oh, brilliant. I've noticed with like these all these characters in this book is they always end up in some sort of danger. And it's always like, oh, somebody else will be deciding their fate, which is always quite extreme, but okay. As they are walking through the building, Hazel spots the men and knows that they are being treated as slaves. Okay, you know what? I think that's slightly extreme. Like, there are times when, like, men do silly things or they're just irritating and stuff, but I just don't think that there's a need to make them a slave, to be quite honest. But, I suppose if that's the way this tribe works, I guess we just have to go with it. They enter the throne room and find Queen Hyla. Hazel sees a horse and she recognizes it. Percy's confused, and it was the horse that they chased in Alaska. Arion was the horse's name. Kinsey tells them his name is Arion. There you go. We've already met him though. The demigods get pushed in front of the queen, and she instantly recognizes Percy. She doesn't recognize Percy for a good reason. Spoiler alert. And Percy remembers destroying Cersei's island, and he thinks that the Gorgons might be healing his memory, like the Gorgon blood. Um, to some degree, yeah, but also no. I think he's just looking for any sign of hope, and I think this was one of those. Hyla doesn't know whether to kill Percy or thank him, and he says she's welcome. Persassy, is that you? Are you back? Yes. One thing I love about Percy, and like one thing I feel like we lost at the beginning of these books, was his sense of humor and his sassiness. But I'm so glad, like towards the end of this book, it is coming back. It makes me feel like he's finding himself again, which I love. Hazel tells them that Raina sent them and points at the ring on Percy's necklace. So Hazel tells them basically everything. She has to give them a rundown so she can prove that they're telling the truth. Otera tells them that Gaia brought her back so that they shouldn't listen to Jupiter. Oh, all right, bloody hell, calm down. Hyla decides to pass judgment. She tells Kinsey to take the males to a holding cell and for everyone else to leave. Yeah, again, I'm thinking that the holding cell is a little bit dramatic, but okay. And the chapter ends with her telling Hazel that they have to talk because at midnight she'll be dead. Okay, whoa. Where did that come from? Like literally the most random thing ever, but okay, we're gonna get into that. Chapter 31, again, Hazel's point of view. And it opens up with Hazel and Hyla talking, and Kinsey comes in to tell Hyla that the prisoners have been locked away. So basically, she's referring to Frank and Percy. Hyla tells them that Gaia sent Otera to lead them against the Romans. She thinks that she is going to lose her throne to Otera, and Otera has challenged her to a duel, and if she wins, she can take Hyla's throne. So basically, what Percy, Frank, and Hazel have done is just walked into a drama that they didn't even know was happening. So obviously there's this big duel going on, and these three people have come with another issue. So everybody, it just proves that like the demigods are not the only people that are having a terrible time, right? Even like a queen is having a terrible time, which is quite an interesting concept. Even Hyla, what she basically explains to Hazel is that even if she's to defeat Otera in battle in the duel tonight, she would still keep coming back, whereas Hyla would die basically. And the reason Otera keeps coming back is because Gaia is rising, and obviously all the monsters and the creatures are all coming back so easily because there's been this door that's been opened that's going to stop that would normally stop those monsters from appearing so fast, if you know what I mean. Turns out that the Amazons don't hate men, they just like to dominate them. Again, it's this concept of I don't believe in people dominating other people. I feel like everyone should be equal. So for me, it was something that took a little bit of time to wrap my head around, but I kind of get the concept now. Arion starts hitting his head against the cage, and apparently, this is a very expensive horse because he only eats gold. So, of course, our lovely girl Hazel steps in, creates a piece of gold, and offers it to him. Hyla thinks that the prophecy could be about Hazel, so she asks Kinsey to embarrass Otera's followers so people could be given a chance to escape. I don't know why I just a bit of word vomit just happened there. I'm pretty sure you guys heard it, and when I edit this, it's probably going to be laughing at myself. But okay, the Queen basically gives Hazel a plan to break the boys out of the prison. She's quite a cool queen, to be fair. Like I do like her very much. I think she's quite a good character. If Hazel succeeds, Hyla would be able to defeat Otera once, and Thantos would be freed, so she would only have to keep trying to kill her until Thantos was freed. if you know what I mean. So Thanatos is the person that will stop these creatures and people from reappearing again. So what Hyla is saying to Hazel is that if I free you and your friends, I only have to keep defeating Otera until Thanatos has been released. So it's like she's putting this pressure on Hazel. She's like, you three Thanatos, and I can kill Otera once and for all, and she'll never come back, and my crown will be safe. Which is quite cool, actually. I love that everybody's stories are all interlinked. It's like, oh, if this happens in your life, then this will happen in my life. Everyone is connected in this massive universe and in this circle of life, and I just think that that is so cool. Hyla gives Hazel Percy's necklace and bids her goodbye, telling her she was happy to have met her. See, I kind of like the dynamic between Hyla and Hazel. I think it's quite a lovely dynamic. It's two women empowering each other and believing in each other and trusting each other, which is so nice to hear. Yeah, so that's basically how the chapter ends. So now we're going to move on to chapter 32, which again is Hazel's point of view. And it opens up with Hazel approaching the prison and she sees the boys in their cells. Kinsey gives her the signal and she moves in. Hazel tells Kinsey to call the guards, and so she does. Because obviously, Hazel can't do it in a way where the guards don't appear because that's going to make it obvious, if you know what I mean. So she has to play her cards right. Hazel summons a tidal wave of bracelets to distract the guards, and she gets Frank and Percy out of their cells and gives Percy his necklace back. His necklace is obviously his Camp Half-Blood necklace with all the beads on it, which is so. They get their weapons back and enter the throne room. Hazel also frees Arion from his cage, which I love. I love that she has such a deep, yeah, like I said, like she has such a spiritual connection with this horse, which I think is so nice. And I think she looks at him like an equal as opposed to like you work for me and you're beneath me and I dominate you, which I love. I love that she has that respect even though he's not a demigod, he is an animal. So this part of the chapter made me laugh was Hazel basically told Percy that Arion is also a son of Poseidon. And you know what? I actually felt really bad for Percy because he just keeps finding these relatives everywhere. Like in like these books, he finds so many sons of Poseidon. And then also in the first five books, like obviously he found Tyson and he found can't remember his name in the Battle of the Labyrinth, the one son of Poseidon who challenged him. Oh, I can't remember what his name is. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like he's constantly finding his dad's children everywhere, which I can't imagine is a nice experience for him. So I do feel really sorry for my baby in that aspect of things. Arion tells Percy that there is a chariot in the warehouse that he's willing to pull, and Hazel, of course, leads the way. They find the chariot, and Percy does his magic on the reins, obviously practice from all the chariot races at Camp Half Blood. Otera bursts in, and they get on the chariot. Obviously, they need to get out of there. Arion speeds off, and Hazel calls Ella, telling her that they have to leave. You know what? Part of me kind of forgot about Ella, to be honest. So I'm glad that Hazel remembered and she called her back. Um, Ella eventually comes and she lands on the chariot and she tells Arion to go, and the skyline of Seattle recedes behind them, and that's where the chapter ends. Again, very, very cool like chapter. I thought that there was a lot going on in that chapter and it was a lot of fun to read. Right, chapter 33 is now Frank's point of view, so we've got a different point of view. And it opens up with them reaching Vancouver and the wheels of the chariot start smoking. Hazel gets the signal and pulls the reins of the chariot and it collapses, throwing all of them to the ground. Ouch. Arion leaves to graze the grass. Of course, it's quite hungry work driving a chariot. Frank was praying that the horse wouldn't come back because he was afraid. Oh, that's so sweet. Like Frank, this big like demigod is so terrified of this horse. It's so cute. Frank realizes that he is at a park near his grandmother's house, but he doesn't want to go. And he realizes that he has to go because they need a place to stay and they need somewhere to rest for the night. And they realize that they end up at an ogre's camp, and Percy calls them Canadians. But that's fair. Like I remember before I started reading these books, somebody made a joke to me about Canadians, and I didn't get the reference because I was like, I'm not sure what that means. And of course, like it's not supposed to be a racist joke, but it comes across as racist, and Frank gets offended. And that entire scene just cracked me up because I remember this person talking to me about this scene, and they were like, "Oh, have you had the scene with the Canadians yet?" And I'm like, "What?" And they were like, "Don't worry, like you'll get it when you get there." And honestly, it just cracked me up. So if there's any Canadians listening to my podcast, I promise you, I don't have anything against Canadians. And it's just this scene in particular makes me laugh. Ella says that they are Lystrogonians. I think that's how you say it. And Percy can kind of remember how to defeat them. He has faced them before. Frank says that he has an idea and jabs his spear into the ground, and that lovely, scary skeleton that made me shit myself in the last episode appears again. Percy tells him that the skeleton is Spartus, but Frank says that he is under control. Without listening to Frank, the skeleton charges at the monsters once and he defeated them, and then he sinks back into the ground. Again, I could never get over this concept of these skeletons that come out of the ground, do their job, and go back in. Like, it really scares me. Like, if I saw that in real life, I'm not joking, I would shit myself. So, let's just hope I never come across anything like that in real life. Hazel was traumatized, and Frank wished that his father was someone else. Now, I think the fact that it scared Hazel kind of tipped Frank off the edge because it was just like Frank was kind of hoping that his dad was Apollo to begin with, like that's who he thought his dad was. And obviously, when Mars revealed himself, like Frank wasn't the happiest. But I guess it's one of those things where Rick is trying to teach you, like, you don't get to choose your parents, but you get to choose who you want to be and whether you want to be like them. And I think Frank is having one of these like epiphany moments where it's like he knows he doesn't want to be like his dad. And Frank is way too sweet. Like, that's why I didn't guess like he was a child of Mars because I was just like, he's so sweet. Like, how? How is that even possible? And the chapter closes with them going to help his grandma. Basically, his grandma's under attack. Chapter 34, second to last chapter that we're going to be talking about in this episode. And it's Frank's point of view again, and it opens up with them at his grandma's house. He has no idea how he's going to be received by his grandmother. Oh, bless him. You know what? This just must be so hard for him. Like, you know how like Leo had a really bad, like sad backstory. Like Frank is another character that has that sad backstory. And they go inside, but they find the house a mess. They go into his grandma's bedroom, and she's lying in the bed, and Mars is stood beside her. But the plot twist is that Percy and Hazel can't see Mars. Mars tells Frank that he has to make the other two leave. So Frank sends them into the other rooms. Mars tells Frank that his grandmother is ready to die, but she has been waiting for him. Aww. Gaia told the Lest- Lestro Lestro Laestrogonians that Frank was coming. That's why they came and surrounded his grandmother's house because they thought that they could find him there or like they could lure him into a trap, basically. And Mars tells him that he is one of the seven from the Great Prophecy. Of course, he is. I mean, he is an incredible character. Like, I'm not surprised that he's part of this amazing prophecy. It's not amazing, but you know what I mean. He could save the world. I truly do believe that. Gaia is worried about Frank. That's why she sent monsters here waiting for him. Basically, she sees Frank as a threat for whatever reason, and we'll dive into that reason the closer we get to it. I just don't want to talk too much about it right now. Mars tells Frank to use the family gifts Seneca Gracious. I don't know if that's how you say it, but basically, one of Frank's ancestors fought like a dragon. Have you guys taken the hint? This is, do you know what? I didn't realize how big of a hint this was because when I remember reading it, I was like, huh, his ancestor can transform into a dragon. That's pretty cool. But the hint didn't really click with me. And like the second and third time that I read it, I was like, okay, yeah, now it makes sense. Rick is an absolute genius. Like I said, like he plants these seeds that he waters and makes bloom later. So if you haven't got it yet, we'll talk more about that. Let's just say that ancestor's power is very important. Mars tells him that his grandmother will help him in the morning and then die. Wow. Someone has to learn some empathy. Like, genuinely, how dare you go to someone's house and tell them, oh, by the way, this is your grandmother. She's going to help you get out this horrible situation and how much danger you're in it. And then she's just going to die. Like, I just thought it was quite an insensitive thing. But then I also remember Mars as a character and the way that he treated Clarice back in the Sea of Monsters book. So, like, I obviously don't expect him to treat his other children with any sort of empathy, because he's just not that sort of character, if you know what I mean. Mars tells him that he isn't weak and that Juno spared him because he has a role to play in what's to come, basically. Again, big hint there, he has a role to play. He might not necessarily like that role or think he can live up to that role, but he does have that. He tells him that without Frank's sense of duty, they will lose the war. Again, another good hint there. Sense of duty. Remember that, very important. Frank asks about his fatal flaw, because obviously every demigod has a fatal flaw. And Mars says that he would have to figure that out himself. And he makes Frank black out. And the chapter closes with Frank waking up to his grandmother calling his name, and she tells him that he needs an escape plan to get out of there, basically. So, chapter 35, the last chapter we're going to be talking about in this episode, is Frank's point of view once again. And it opens up with him looking out the window, and he sees the house surrounded. His grandmother has sent Percy and Hazel to the attic where the weapons are being kept. That's quite cool. They have weapons in the attic. I think it's pretty cool. His grandmother reveals that Hazel cooked him breakfast. Guys, she is just wifey material. Like, if she's not perfect for him, I just don't know what it is. Like, that's the definition of a brilliant woman. Like, she's making sure that he's fed and ready for battle. I think there's no more wifey quality than that. He claims that she's not his girlfriend, and his grandmother says she should be. Oh, she's a supporter like us, guys. You have no idea how happy I was when I read that. I was like, oh, that's so cute. Then his grandma reminds him of the airfield not far from their house, and that the pilot is an old friend that can take him north. Isn't that so cool? Like, they know that there's a pilot that would help them in any situation. I think that's pretty sick. The house starts shaking, and his grandmother asks him if he has figured out his powers yet. Has he? Not sure, but we'll see. His mother always told him that he could be anything, which is the literal truth. He could be anything. If you guys haven't got it by now, like, I don't know what other clue I can give you without literally saying what he is, or what his power is. So if you haven't figured it out yet, you'll figure it out very soon. Basically, the idea is that he can shapeshift into living things. So, you know, animals, dragons, that sort of thing. The ogres are becoming impatient, and his grandma tells him that he needs to go, basically. His grandmother knows about the great prophecy, but she doesn't like it. Oh, she, you know what? She is a tough cookie, but she does love him in her own unique way. And, even up until, like, this is her last moment with him, really, she is still trying to protect him. So I have to give her some credit for that. As he's leaving, he tells her that he will make her proud. And part of me thought that he already had. Like, he's already such an incredible human being, like, without his powers. So I don't imagine that his grandmother could be any prouder of him anyway. And the last images he sees of her are glaring at the ogres through the window. And that was it. So that's where the chapter ends. So let's kind of tie this all together, because I've been talking for a really long time. I do try to make these episodes short, but let's be honest, I get excited and I like to waffle. So I apologise for that. And if you made it to the end, I'm so happy. And I promise I'm going to try and make this wrap up section as quick as possible. So let's talk about my final thoughts and feelings. So Frank going with Hazel to the underworld in that echo of her past was such a genius idea. I think that is such a defining moment in their relationship development, and I know that whatever happens over the next few books, like, they deserve to be together. Like, that's what I know. Kyla's not as bad as I thought she'd be. She's an incredible leader, and she did Hazel and Percy and Frank a ginormous favor, and there's nothing more incredible than that. And she's such a warrior, and she knows that she wants to keep fighting for her people, which is amazing. Hazel, of course, breaking the boys out the Amazon prison was a complete badass move, and I'm glad she finally got to ride Arian. I think that was such a integral moment for her, so I loved that. Percy and Hazel watching the skeleton fight, they had the exact same reaction as I had when I read about it the first few times. So yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one that was, like, absolutely traumatized by that. Of course, like, Frank's interaction with Mars, he was somewhat helpful. I still wouldn't cast him as a good parent, but I guess he did sort of help them and give them hints as to how to get out. So maybe I'll give him a teeniest amount of credit for that. Frank and his grandmother, they do have a complicated relationship. But I think that moment where he says to her that he wants to make her proud was so wholesome and sweet, and it made me a little emotional. And also, like, his grandma is absolutely hilarious. I love how direct and straightforward she is. It's amazing. And finally, Frank knowing what his ability is. Did you guys manage to guess that? Because I feel like a lot of people weren't sure what that was, and I guessed that he was a shapeshifter because I was like, that's pretty sick. Um, I like to read between the lines, and I'm an overthinker as well. So when I read something, like I'm fully engrossed in it, so I kind of figured it out. But if you didn't figure it out, I suppose it'd be a nice surprise for you. But it just made me think about how much of an intentional writer Rick is. And it is one of the reasons why he is my favorite author. Like, nothing is in his books for no reason, which I just love. And I love you so much, Rick. And I'm just so grateful for the way he writes these books. They're just amazing. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Sorry it was a bit long. I will try and speed it up a little bit more next week. But thank you guys so much for listening in. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, all episodes of the podcast are available to stream on Spotify and on my YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel whilst you are there. It would be greatly appreciated. Follow me on Spotify as well. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Threads. That's where I'm the most active. And feel free to DM me any questions. I love hearing from you guys. Or if there's stuff that you picked on in the up and on in the book and I didn't point it out, please do let me know. I love hearing other people's thoughts and feelings. And sometimes people pay a lot more attention than I do. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Like I said, there'll be a new episode next week. We're almost towards the end of this book, so just hang in there with me, and then we're going to move on, hopefully, to The Mark of Athena, which is one of my favourite books in this series. So stay with me for that. Next episode, we're going to be talking through chapters 36 to 42. So meet me here next week to hear about that, and I will speak to you guys very soon. Mwah. Bye.